But here you were in a class which was filled with toppers from every good school, great school in India. And so it was really overwhelming in a way because, as toppers in our own schools, we were sort of used to, in some ways, things being a bit easy for us. And here you were in a class where everyone was brilliant.
I remember this one time I visited you at LSR and you were like, oh, we don't call this a canteen, we call it a cafe. And I walked in, I was like, actually, ours is more like a canteen, theirs is a cafe. What course did you take after economic honors?
So I did my master's in development studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I wanted to do a course that was more applied than academic, I guess.
Today we have Muzna Alvi with us, and her life has always inspired me. And I met her in 11th standard, and from there onwards, I have always looked up to her, how she has managed her life, how she just grabs opportunities and makes it work for her. So I wanted to start my podcast journey with her as my guest. So meet my friend and your special guest, Muzna Alvi.
Thank you, Tanvi. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really excited to talk with you without any children around. I think this is the first opportunity we've had in years to just sit by ourselves and chat. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, and thanks for taking out the time today. So Muzna, I've known you as my friend from 11th standard, and there also I remember that I used to have tuitions for maths and economics and whatnot, and you always aced the exams without any tuitions. You were always on your own, and yet you were one of the toppers. So how did you manage? Just share your life journey with all of us today. And from there, how did you manage to get into LSR? Just share your journey with all the women who want to be like you.
Oh, thanks so much. You're being very humble though, because Tanvi was always she was the topper for commerce in our school. So I really looked up to her as well, and I guess there was a bit of healthy competition as well. I went into 11th grade really knowing in my mind that I wanted to do an MBA. And to me, doing commerce seemed like, sort of the natural way to do it at the time. I was very singular in my focus. Even though my father was a doctor, there was never a doubt in my mind that I wanted to do science at all. And so it was always just commerce or arts. And one thing my mom was very clear though was that if you're doing commerce, you have to do math with it. You can't not do, who does commerce without maths? She was, so that was ingrained in me, and so that's the route I took. And then after that, once our 12th grade results were out, I was deciding between doing BCom and econ honors, economics honors. And I remember my Masi, who I was staying with at the time, had a friend who was a professor of economics at Delhi University, and she made me talk to him because I was very confused about what I wanted to do. You had gotten into BCom at SRCC, and I wanted to sort of join the same course because it would have been so nice to sort of continue with friends. But then I had also gotten into economics honors at LSR, and so I was very, very confused about what I wanted to do. And I remember he told me that if you want to think, do economics; if you want to do commerce. And so that really stuck with me. And I was also sort of thinking, even then at that point in my mind, I really thought that I wanted to do an MBA after doing my bachelor's. But I thought, if there's even the tiniest bit of chance that I may not want to do that, what allows me the most amount of options to do things afterwards? And I thought that economics was the way to go. And in retrospect, I'm really glad I did, because I, didn't end up doing an MBA. I took a completely different path in life. And so maybe those choices actually worked out well for me. And so as I was finishing up my undergrad in economics at LSR, I didn't want to do economics. I guess I didn't want to do pure economics to continue. And so I was looking at where I could use my economics training in a more sort of practical way. And so I did a master's in development studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Bombay.
How was your experience studying at the Lady Shri Ram College? How was the whole 3-year economic honors journey?
I mean, it was excellent. We were studying at the time. It is also in a way a bit of an eye opener, because we had done well in school, which is why we got into good colleges, and I think you will sort of understand when I say this. But here you were in a class which was filled with toppers from every good school, great school in India. And so it was really overwhelming in a way because, as toppers in our own schools, we were sort of used to, in some ways, things being a bit easy for us. And here you were in a class where everyone was brilliant, right? Everyone was exceptional. And so you had to work extra hard to even just to get by. And I remember once I had gotten into college, I thought, okay, I've made it. I don't need to stress at all. And that really was my undoing. In first year, I got a rude awakening, thinking, I thought, I didn't need to put as much effort, but that really wasn't the case. So it was a class full of brilliant classmates and excellent teachers. And of course, the college itself was great in terms of providing us a well-rounded education. That wasn't just focused on academics, but sort of making us thinking, feeling individuals. And so I was very grateful for my time at the college and the friendships I made there, and the connections that I made there that I hold on to very dearly even now.
I remember this one time I visited you at LSR and you were like, oh, we don't call this a canteen, we call it a cafe. And I walked in, I was like, actually, ours is more like a canteen, theirs is a cafe. So, it was fun.
Yeah, and I believe that still continues. It's still called a cafe.
Yeah. So, great. So, what course did you take after Economic Honors?
So I did my master's in development studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I wanted to do a course that was more applied than academic, I guess is the way to put it. But as I was doing it, I realized that maybe I wanted to do more academic research, or at least I realized that maybe just doing a development studies course and stopping at it would be a bit of a ceiling for me in terms of my professional growth. And I realized that I probably wanted to do a PhD. And maybe subconsciously, in a way, it was sort of delaying the real world. If you have a PhD, you can take another 5 years and still be a student. And, it allowed you to push off real world responsibilities, a real job for a little bit longer, or maybe that's how I was thinking. And so after that, I enrolled in a MPhil course in economics at JNU, at Jawaharlal Nehru University. And it was a conscious decision to do an economics course rather than, a development studies PhD.
But did you at any time feel like, okay, I've had enough of economics, like after 3 years of graduation and then 2 years of masters? Did you ever feel like that, or had you fallen in love with eco by then?
No, I don't think I ever fell in love with economics, or at least economics as we sort of traditionally understand the sort of quantitative aspects of it. Development studies that way was an excellent course because it allowed you to see how economics can be applied to a diversity of subjects, because we were studying urban studies, we were doing rural economics, development studies, looking at we had courses on society and crime. And so, a whole bunch of ways in which, your economics training, and I had classmates from many different disciplines. So just being able to talk to people who come from other disciplinary training and seeing how they apply those concepts that they've learned in the disciplines to these world problems, I guess that was very interesting. And that allowed me to sort of shape my further economics journey the way I wanted to, and answering the questions that I was interested in, rather than sort of what one thinks of when one thinks economics, which is, maybe finance and the stock market and, macroeconomics. So I think that really helped, yeah.
And how was TIS different from your LSR experience? Was it any thing that you felt differently, or the way economics was taught, or anything at all?
I mean, it was
How's
a
that experience?
It was a co-ed college to begin with, and I met my
after
husband
a long
there.
time.
Yeah, after a long time, because I went to a girls' school.
LSR.
And I met my husband at TIS, so that worked out well for me.
Okay, that's good.
But it was the first time I had lived away from home, because I'm from Delhi, and the college was the university was in Bombay, and so we lived on campus and went to classes on campus. So that allowed you to engage with your peers the whole day, right? I mean, I remember sort of we would sit in the dining hall and have discussions, sit late at night doing assignments. It was a completely different kind of learning experience, I think. And it was fun. It was fun to be away from home and have less supervision. But also, I mean, I think from a learning perspective, it was just an interesting environment to be in. And I think what I really appreciate about my experience at TIS was that I got to study with just a diversity of students of the kind that I hadn't met in my personal life, in school or in college. There were people who came to TIS from sort of all walks of life, and that really was an eye-opener. It really sort of made you understand just the kind of challenges people face and overcome to get a higher education. And that really was an eye-opener and a humbling experience, yeah.
So what about your PhD then? How did you apply for MPhil? What was the decision like? What were you thinking after completing your master's? What was going through your mind? And what were the different options that people were taking at that point in time after your master's?
So after my master's, I had a job offer. In fact, I had several job offers working in sort of research organizations. And
can you name a few, like maybe your peers joined them? Or
yeah. So I started off actually working at TERI, which is the Energy and Resources Institute. I had an offer from a couple of other research organizations. Several of my colleagues, my classmates, went into work at various other kinds of development organizations, both in India, some abroad. Some right away went to do higher education. I was a bit unsure, so I had given sort of entrance tests for MPhil courses in a couple of different institutes, but not fully kind of internalizing what it meant or what I wanted to do. So I had actually started my job at TERI when I got to know that I got into JNU in the Economics MPhil program. And honestly, I had just given the entrance test on a whim. I really wasn't expecting that I will get through. And then I did, and I had to make a difficult decision about, what I wanted to do, because I just joined this job. I remember there was a bond signing thing where if you signed the bond, you got a slightly higher salary. But I don't think I signed the bond because I think in the back of my head, I was still like, oh, I don't know if I really want to be here for 2 years or not. And then when this happened, I was like, I guess I have to do it. And so I did. I joined the MPhil program with the intention that I would do the MPhil just for a year and convert it into a PhD program and do my PhD at GNU as well. But then again, without planning, I realized that no, maybe I do want to try to do a PhD abroad, even though that was not part of my initial life timeline. I had thought to myself that, I'll do my master's by 23 and I'll do an MPhil by 25 and then I'll get married and I'll have kids, and doing a PhD in the US was not part of my mental personal timeline because I thought, it takes 5 to 6 years. I'll be 31 by the time I finish. When will I get married? When will I have kids? Even though I was very career oriented, I think it's just the conditioning. You're sort of thought, you're in the back of your mind, it plays out that your life is supposed to follow a certain trajectory.
Especially for women, I think.
Of course, yeah. And even though there was never any pressure from home or anything like that, I think it was just really a thing that I was thinking in my head that, I have to follow this timeline and I have to get married at this age and, have kids by the time I'm in my 30 or early 30s. And a PhD in the US didn't fit with that timeline in my head, so I always disregarded it. But actually my now husband at that time, boyfriend, was really interested in academia, and he really wanted to do his PhD, and he really motivated me and got me thinking about why not do a PhD in the US if you think that it gives you an opportunity and you get a great education in the process. We don't have to think like a PhD is like putting a pause on your life. It's just a continuation of your personal and professional journey. And so that's what I did. Instead of doing a 1-year MPhil course, I did the full 2 years, did my MPhil degree and simultaneously applied to the US, and then
So you finished the MPhil here?
I finished my MPhil here, yes. I got my MPhil degree here and then went to do my PhD in the US.
So which university in the US did you apply to, or how does it work? Like, I don't know. How do you apply for a PhD?
So
US?
I believe the process has changed a little bit now, but at the time when I was applying, we had to write a statement of purpose, so sort of motivating what we wanted to do. Unlike European places where you have to identify your professor, who you want to work with, what research you want to do. In the US, you have 2 to 3 years of coursework that you have to do before you actually embark on your research journey. And I think that's good for people who don't know what they want to do, because it allows you to sort of study all subjects, get a taste for what is, what are the different fields you can pursue within a discipline, and then narrow down on your research question, narrow down on who you want to work with. So we had to write a statement of purpose, which motivating why you want to do a PhD and what are some of the topics you might want to study. We had to give a GRE exam, which is the graduate record examination, GRE, and then you have to put in all of your grades of your college, masters, any courses that you've done, and then
so you have to apply to specific universities or specific colleges separately.
Yes, you have to apply to separate colleges, separate universities.
So
Send
how
your
many
scores.
colleges do you remember?
Oh yes, I do actually. I think I applied to 10 or 11 colleges.
Okay.
I think 10 in the US and maybe 2 in the UK that year. And I didn't get through anywhere in the UK, and I got into 3 places in the US.
Okay.
And so I decided between the 3 choices that I had. Yeah.
So what was your final choice?
I ended up going to Michigan State University, and I did the economics program.
Okay.
And I think they had a really strong labor economics program, like a labor economics faculty. And at the time, I was really interested in looking at labor economics, and so that's what I went with. And it really worked out well, because the next year my husband got into the University of Michigan, which is just 60 miles away from my university. And so from both sort of a personal and professional perspective, it all really worked out well for us. Yeah.
So great. Then tell us about your life in the US.
Life in the US was.
Do you want to share what was the cost structure of the PhD? Did you manage to get some sponsorships there, or?
Of course, yeah. No, I think the only reason I was able to do a PhD in the US was because it was fully funded, and in our case, the funding came in the form of TA-ships and RA-ships. So you work as a teaching assistant or a research assistant at your university, and that pays for your tuition fees, and that also pays you a stipend that is sufficient to cover living expenses. Of course, you can't live lavishly, and you can't sort of have frequent trips back home, but it's enough to cover your expenses as a student. Okay. And I know that I wouldn't have been able to do a PhD without that funding. One of the PhD offers that I had was did not come with guaranteed funding. They said, okay, you come in, maybe the first year you pay yourself, and then we'll see. I was unfortunately not in a position where I could take that risk, or pay for myself even for a year. Any kind of education in the US is very expensive, especially as international students. You pay the full international rate,
and is much higher than what any US citizen would.
Yes, absolutely. And so that really adds up. And of course, cost of living, especially if you're in a big city. I wasn't, but if you're in a big city, then that really adds up. So I was really able to go because I had a teaching assistantship right from the first day itself. And that helped. And that was there all throughout the 5 years. It's conditional on performance, of course, but sort of most students are able to meet those expectations and have that funding. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So then Taha joined you after a year.
Yes.
So it must have been easier to have somebody around. But how was your life in the US overall? Did you feel lonely? Did you feel homesick often? Or did you have enough friends around?
I mean, a mix of both. Of course, in the beginning, I was very homesick. And I remember my first semester there, I started in August. And up until, I think, November or December, I would just sit in the back of my class and just keep looking at tickets to India, hoping that I would find a cheap ticket. And in fact, I did. I do remember at one class I was sitting, and I actually distinctly remember where I was sitting and whose class it was, when I found a $500 return ticket to come from India to America and back. And I immediately booked it for my mother, without asking her. It was going to be my winter break, and I was missing home so much, and I was missing family so much that I didn't even ask her. I just booked the ticket. And then I remember I booked it with the wrong name. I think I spelled her name wrong, and I was like, "Oh my God, what was I thinking?" And so it required a bit of back and forth with the airline to get the tickets changed. So I did end up sort of calling my mom in the first winter that I was there. But it became easier as it went along. Of course, I made friends, and I was really fortunate because I was in Michigan, where I had a lot of family in Michigan and Ohio. That's a neighboring state. So, every couple of weeks, someone from my extended family would come and drop off some food or come just to meet or just to take me shopping.
Yeah.
So, I never really felt lonely. I knew that there was some family an hour to the north or 2 hours to the south. So that was really good. I think I was really fortunate in that regard.
Okay.
And then, of course, once my husband joined me, then it became much easier. Yeah.
So when did you guys get married? In
So
the middle of your PhD or after you completed it?
Yeah, we got married in the middle of my PhD. So I was about a year and a half into my PhD when we got married. So my husband joined me in 2023 in August. He joined his university in the US, and then that December we went back home and got married. Yeah, and then we didn't actually. And by that time, I had finished with most of my coursework at my university, so I was able to move in with him, where his university was about 100 kilometers away from where my university was, and I would just commute when I needed to.
And then you both moved back to pursue the same PhDs that you were doing.
Yes, yeah.
And you decided to have your first child in the US itself?
Yes, yeah. And again, not a sort of, well, I guess in some ways a conscious decision. I was finishing my PhD in 2017, and I knew that I would wanted to join a job straight after. And so I had this very small window of when I would be finished with my PhD and when I needed to join my job. And I told my husband that, if we have to have kids, it has to happen now. Otherwise, new job, then you won't be able to take a break and you don't know when, what kind of job you'll have. Because at the time I didn't have a job. It was really just sort of, I was applying for jobs. It was a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
I just knew that there was this small window I had of, being able to take some time off to recover after childbirth. And so we were fortunate that it all worked out timing wise. And I'm glad that I did it when I did, because having had my child and then immediately joining my job, I realized that it would have affected me professionally if I had to take a childbirth break right after joining a new job. And so I'm really glad that I sort of timed it that way, that I was able to have my baby and then join my new job when he was about 2.5 months old. Yeah.
So how was the experience of having a baby in the US?
Very, very pleasant, actually. We were in what they call a university system. So the university where my husband goes to is also a medical teaching university. And so they have the university hospitals that are linked to the university. And I was very fortunate that we had very good health insurance, both through my university, and then I also had supplementary health insurance through my husband's university. Childbirth is an expensive, all kind of medical healthcare is expensive in the US if you don't have health insurance. And childcare especially childbirth can become very expensive very quickly because, complications can happen and there's no way to predict how much it will be. And so we were really fortunate that we had good health insurance, and I would really advocate for always sort of making sure that you're protected against these sort of unforeseen medical expenses, because I remember when our bill for my son's birth came, it was over $50,000, and we had to pay only $35 out of that, which was for the food that my husband ate at the hospital when he was there. But really zero for everything else because of the great health insurance that we had. And I can't imagine sort of being someone who's a student or not yet at a stable job, facing a $50,000 medical bill would be absolutely devastating. And so I'm really grateful that we had that, and I'm really grateful that just in time we took the supplemental insurance from my husband's university as well. So whatever my insurance did cover, his insurance picked up, and so that really worked out, because my son needed to be in the NICU for some time because he had jaundice, and so that really sort of increased our bill. So just want to sort of advocate for just making sure that you have your health insurance is covered. Yeah, absolutely.
And then tell me about your job. How did you get your first job? Did you have to apply at a lot of places? Was it an easy journey? And because Zidane was already in your life, did you find it difficult to transition back to, the work atmosphere? I think that was also the COVID time.
No, it was before COVID years.
Before COVID.
It was the time of the first Trump administration, though. So it was a challenging time to navigate as an international student because there was a lot of uncertainty about, what kind of jobs will give visa sponsorship or not. A lot of jobs that I applied to where I was shortlisted, sort of straight up once the new administration came into power. They said, I'm sorry, we can't, take this forward because we don't know whether we'll be able to sponsor you for a visa or not. So I actually applied to several jobs, and I was shortlisted for a couple of them, and eventually had 2 or 3 offers that I was deciding between. And then this job where I am, which I joined right after my son was born and where I still am, I think it really worked out well for me. And I think my life has been a series of very fortunate coincidences because this job happened to be in Delhi with an international organization, and so I was recruited from my headquarters in the US, but sort of posted to India, you can say. And the timing could not have been better because just having a small child, being in another city in the US while my husband was doing his PhD, because he started a year after me and his was a longer program. He had to still continue to be where his university was. I don't even know how we would have even managed it if I had gotten, a regular job in any other university or research organization in the US. And so this worked out really excellently for us, that I was able to come back to India and work with excellent colleagues while also maintaining a tie to the US because, our headquarters are there. So I'm able to sort of travel back and forth frequently and maintain that connection. And there's always the option of, being able to go back and work from Washington if I wanted to, which I have done in the past several years. I have had periods where I have worked from the office there as well. And so it all, really worked out, and I'm glad that I was able to come back here and have the support of family and, help with the baby.
But it must have been a very difficult time as well. So you were away from your husband and you were managing your child back in Delhi, but managing your job must have been a very, again, like, resettling period.
It is, of course. And settling back into living in India, settling back into living with your parents after not having lived with them for so long was of course a challenge. You're not used to at all getting instructions from others, and in the eyes of your parents you're still a child, especially you're a child who has a child and you're still navigating what it means to be a parent yourself while your parents are navigating how they should sort of, take a step back and let you figure things out. So I think it was challenging, but I'm very grateful that I had the help that I did because I really salute women who are able to do it all without any help. It definitely takes a village to raise a child, and I'm very grateful that I had my village around me.
Okay. So this is the period when you started making money. Right, and so how did you have a wealth strategy when you were making money, and how did you start investing? What was your take about that?
So I was I grew up in a household where I wouldn't say that money was tight, but it was not. We were always needing to be careful with money, I would say. And so and being the oldest child and being an oldest daughter, I was very conscious of, being careful about how I spent. And so it was always in my mind that I wanted to be careful with how I spent my money and how I managed my savings. And so I remember the first job that I got out of my master's, it wasn't even a lot, but I worked with a friend of ours who manages investments. That's their family business. I worked with her and I started investing a part of my salary. It wasn't a large amount, but I wanted to be consistent. And so I just set it up so that it would just automatically go from my account every month on the first or some time, I think whatever we had.
An SIP?
An SIP, yeah. So I started an SIP in 4 or 5 different funds, and I said I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to have to make a decision every month about, how much do I want to save, how much do I want to invest. If it happens automatically, I'll be forced to sort of stick to it.
Yeah.
And then that way you're forced to stick to a budget of whatever's left over in your bank account. And
Right.
so I think I had started back then, and then of course once I moved to the US, I stopped because I was not making any money in India, so I couldn't do those investments. But when I came back, I restarted SIPs, and then I kind of also dabbled a little bit in the stock market because I was like just curious what it was like. It always excited me when I heard about people making so much money in one day, or and so I did a little bit, but most of my investments were still in the form of systematic investment plans, because I think investing in stocks requires a lot more research and thinking, which at the time I didn't have the time to do.
Right.
And so SIPs made sense, and that's something that I have sort of continued to do since then. And then over time, of course, I've tried to diversify the kinds of things I invest my funds in. I always make sure that I have some bit of an emergency fund always in the form of cash. I recently bought a flat, an apartment, because I thought, maybe in the diversification strategy, that was a natural next step. And so, yeah, that's how it's been, a mix of a little bit of everything. But I don't think I've really, and maybe we should talk after this on sort of making a more coherent investment strategy, because I think it's been a little bit of this, a little bit of that, without any real strategic thinking. I think it's been more feelings based. Yeah.
No, but you've always been on top of the money management game, because you always knew what were the tax saving options. Even when you were in college, because you were, I think, helping your mother or your Mossy in helping them make their decision. So you always knew what were the options out there, even if you didn't know which was the best, but you were always in the know of things. So I really appreciate that. But tell me more about how did the buying the home thing come about, and that's a big decision for any woman to make, and at a young age, how did that happen?
So I always maintain that buying a house in India is an emotional decision. It's not a financial decision. Because if you look at the numbers, I mean, it always makes more economic sense to live on rent perpetually, and invest the balance of, the EMI in the house in which I live would be at least double of the rent that I'm currently paying in the house that I live in. And I could just invest that amount into a mutual fund and make a lot more. So, we always buy a house for emotional reasons. In my case, though, I think, again, in these sort of series of good coincidences, or fortunate coincidences, I have an aunt who lives in the US who had an apartment in India, and she was retiring, and she was kind of looking to consolidate. She wanted to sell her flat, and she said, I'm retiring now. I really need to, make sure all of my money is in the US. I'm getting old. I want to not introduce complications for my children, who were both American citizens and had no intention of ever coming back to India. And so she was looking to sell, but it was, I think, a tough market that year because she really wasn't getting good offers. And so she was almost about to sell to someone for a rate that was much below the market rate. And I said, you know what, instead of selling to someone else at such a good rate, why don't you just sell it to me? I mean, I know I may not be able to pay you right away, but we can work something out. It's family. And she said, yeah, sure. I mean, as long as you handle the paperwork, I can't come back and forth to do the paperwork. As long as you handle the paperwork, I'm happy to sell it to you at this price. And so it sort of worked out, that I was able to buy from my Masi. And so it took the stress of buying away because, we knew the buyer, the seller.
Yeah.
It was a perfectly clean sort of transaction. And so now I have a flat. I don't live in it, it's rented out. But it's there, and it's obviously appreciated in value since, because the market went back up. And I had managed to get it at a good rate, so I think I sort of have managed to make a good return on it. But I maintain that I think if that opportunity hadn't come up, I may have not bought a house, because I do think that as long as you have cash flow, it makes more sense to live on rent than to buy a house. But I do understand sort of having sort of in speaking with my mom or my mother-in-law, who's now in the process of buying a house, that home buying is an emotional process, and I think just having a place where nobody can kick you out of it. And there is some value to that, and I appreciate that feeling. And I think for women especially, that's much, much more important because, you know, you either live in your parents' home, or at least the generation before us, you're living in your parents' home and then you're going to go live in your husband's home. So just to have a place where, you know, it's yours, it's in your name, and nobody can, you know, get you out of there, I think I appreciate that sentiment.
It's very empowering, I think.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of women at such a young age get this opportunity, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So then tell me what happened next when Taha, he finished his PhD. How did you guys, like, are you guys here for good? And how did the next baby happen?
Yeah. So my husband's still in the US and I've been here, and we've done, like I said, sort of stints of 8 or 9 months in the US and then back, and then again about a year in the US and back. So in the last 7, my son is now almost 8. We've done, I think, 2 or 3 stints now of, you know, extended periods in the US and back. And my husband's still there, and I'm back here now. And at some point we decided we wanted to have another child. It's just the timing was never working out. My husband wanted to finish his PhD before he had another baby. He wanted to sort of feel a bit of settlement in his life. Excuse me. My husband wanted to feel a bit of being settled in his life. But you know, biological clocks were ticking, and I think my older son really felt like he was the guy who really would have thrived with having a sibling. He really missed having a sibling of his own. All of his friends were having, you know, siblings at that time, and so and it's something that I've always wanted, a couple of children at least. And so there was a time period when, you know, in between the stint of being in the US, the timing worked out, and my husband was just about finishing his PhD, and we thought this was the right time. So both of our kids have been really lucky for us, and my first son came when I was finishing my PhD, and the second one came when my husband was finishing his PhD. So they've been fortunate for us. Yes, yeah.
Great. So tell us, like, how do you manage 2 kids, work, and then a work which takes you to the US and, you know, back home? So how challenging it is, or how unsettling it gets for the children now that, you know, they'll be studying in India or to the US? How will you manage all of that?
Yeah, so I've made a conscious decision now to sort of stay settled in Delhi for the time being. And I think that's got to do with the fact that now my son is in grade 3. You know, when he was younger, it was easier to sort of move him in and out of schools. And he was also, he's really a resilient kid that, you know, he managed to adjust and make friends in every environment, whether it's in India or in the US, or, you know, we lived in Goa for a year in between, and he was fine there too. But I realized that I think, much like us, I think kids also need some kind of grounding, and they need their roots to be settled. And so for the time being, I've decided that we'll stay in, that I'll stay in India with the 2 kids here. And once my husband's in the process of finishing up a postdoctoral research fellowship in the US. Once he finishes, then I think he will join us as well, and then maybe together we take a decision about where we want to be long term. But we've been a bit of a family on the move, I would say. You know, we've moved several houses and countries and cities, and it was exciting. But I think as I'm getting older, I'm feeling the need to sort of settle down in one place and set roots. And so we'll be here for a couple of years at least until we figure out where we finally want to be. But never say never, so you don't know.
No, it's been an exciting life for you. In fact, every time, like, us friends, we talk about you, oh, Muzna's moved to the US, oh, Muzna's back, anything like that, we just know at the back of the head that, you know, you will make it work because Muzna always has a plan. So, you know, so all the best.
Yeah, thank you.